welcome all for coming to our legislative meet and greet. It's a very important time of year, and as you can see by the agenda, let me share my screen real quick and I'll pull up the agenda. We're going to be talking about some, kind of important proposed cuts that we hope do not happen, but that's kind of what we're going to do. But first of all, I'd like to welcome and do introductions. I think I'm going to do this backwards and start with the Walla Walla Valley Disability Network and myself do our introduction. Sorry, I'm letting people in. Cindy, can you see who's in the waiting room, and can you let people in as they come?
If you can share that co-hosting, I can do that.
Okay. So I'm Angie Witt, and I'm the parent-to-parent coordinator. I have been the parent-to-parent coordinator for 3 years now. This time around, I was the parent-to-parent coordinator in the 2000s for about 9 years. And I'm also a parent of a young adult now with disabilities. And parent to parent is, we are under the umbrella of the Walla Walla Valley Disability Network. And most of our funding comes from the Arc of Washington and Walla Walla County. And we really appreciate the funding that you give us. What our funding covers is information and support. So we give out information to families. We do about 4 times a year, we do a presentation of sorts. So legislative meet and greet every year. We do DDA information. We also do IEP meetings, support meetings. We have 2 to 3 support meetings a month. One is designated for autism. We are also serve Columbia County, and we will be hearing from at least one Columbia County parent later in this presentation. And under Walla Walla Valley Disability Network, we're able to provide through different grants and funding that our wonderful ED provides to us is recreation. Of course, this year it's been quite slow, but we still do things via recreation. We're planning a virtual basketball videos for our families to enjoy. And we just had a Halloween drive-through with great success with our community. And that was paid through our Walla Walla Valley Disability Network. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our executive director, and that is Cindy Knight. And she is one of the founding members of the Walla Walla Valley Disability Network, which was founded by herself and 2 or 3 other parents in 2014. We also have Shamra Baez, who is the admin assistant, and she will be sharing later about our wonderful website that we share all sorts of information on. And if you have not visited our website, I encourage you to do so. Shamra, can you wave to us? Are you on video? I know she's here, but anyway, she's wonderful. She's a great addition to our team. And we also have a Hispanic outreach coordinator, and that's Isabel Fuentes. And I don't know if she has made it today, but she has done a wonderful job of being very diverse in this time of providing support to her families as well. And now I would like the legislators and the county commissioners, or if there is any city council members on, I'd like for them to share a little bit about themselves, maybe some of the work that you've done in our community. Anything you want to share about yourselves. I'm ready to listen. So we'll start with you, Representative Rude.
Great. Well, thank you all for the opportunity to be here. As you may remember, I worked for Senator Walsh for 4 years, 2 years in the House and 2 years in the Senate. So I had a kind of a head start on the opportunity to work on DD issues. and kind of better understand the diversity of the DD community. So now I'm just wrapping up my first term and look forward to the opportunity to work with all of you moving forward. Something that I got to work on last session that I think we had at a previous meet and greet that we had discussed a little bit, which is adding the disability designation to ID cards and driver's license. So we discussed that, and we're able to get a bill through. I think Senator Brown ended up being the prime sponsor of that bill, so that families and guardians can make that decision for themselves if they want to add a designation that might help the interaction with law enforcement and emergency responders to better understand the challenges they might face in that interaction with a person that has a disability, whether that's developmental or physical. So I'll stop there, but definitely look forward to hearing what the challenges are that you're facing and how I can be a good advocate and effective advocate for you in the next session.
I thank you. And we did bring this topic up at our last legislative meet and greet with the identification with our officers in town. So it's nice to see that, you know, what we shared and you took the ball and ran with that, and we appreciate that. Okay, Tompkins, I will let you have the board.
Oh, thank you. My name is Greg Tompkins. I'm in my 14th year as a Walla Walla County Commissioner. I did 3 terms, and like you, Angela, I stepped away for a little bit, and now I'm back. I took a 4-year hiatus and then came back, and I'm chairman of the board this year, a liaison for our Department of Community Health. They keep me apprised of what's going on, as well as many of you know Carla Nibbler. I stay in touch with Carla quite a bit, and we will continue to champion your causes with Representative Rude, as well as Representative Clicker now, or Representative-elect, and then Senator-elect Perry Dozier. I did just receive, just before 1 o'clock, some more documents for you that I read through briefly, and so I'm looking forward to reading through those. And then if there's anything we can do at our level to help champion it, we would be glad to do that.
Thank you. We are so appreciative of all the support that we have received from the county through, I think since about 1980. Parent to Parent has been a part of this community, and so having the county support along with the DD County coordinator support has been wonderful for us. So I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen with Shamra. We're going to move along and have her show you our website. So let's see if I can. I'm going to make you a host, Shamra, because that's the only option I have.
So this is the Walla Walla Valley Disability Network's website, www.vdn.org. It has been up and running for just over 2 years now. And I'll give you a very brief tour, because further down on the homepage, there is now a video that shows people how to use the website. But I just want to point out a few features right now, since you're here. The first feature that's quite important to us is the ability to translate this website into numerous different languages. So as you can see here, there are a lot of languages to choose from. Spanish seems to be the most useful right now. And this will translate every page on our website into the chosen language. The other thing to note is that these 3 horizontal lines here is called the hamburger. And if that is selected, you can see a good view of the entire website everything that's on here. And each of these entries are links to the web pages, specific web pages. So we have information based, organized on calendar with our events that are upcoming, who we are, getting started. We have information organized based on life stage or age of the individuals with disabilities. We have a resources section, which is by far the largest section of our website, which has information on local resources for these various categories, advocacy, and then we have an entire section based on information sorted by diagnosis. And like I said, each of these are links that will take you to the webpage. Since there is a video explaining this on the homepage, there's just one other thing that I want to point out, and that is that anything that you put the cursor over that gets underlined is a link, as well as anything in green that underlines when you hover over it is also a link. And that will take you to another web page. And then to get back to the homepage, you can always click our logo. And there we are. So that's a very brief tour of our website.
Thank you, Shamra. Would you mind, can you click on maybe a family story real quick, just to
Sure.
show what it's like, and
So our family stories here each month on, recently in our monthly newsletter, we've highlighted a different family stories that they've written. So for instance, November's newsletter was Jared Hawkins writing about his son, Gavin. And there are several different family stories to explore. Are there any questions? Okay.
thank you, Shamra. If you can share, make me the host again, I can share my screen. So we're going to move along in our agenda, as long as nobody has any questions. We're going to talk about the Dda Proposed Cuts for Washington State and how this may affect our families. I'm going to share a little bit, and then I'm going to ask Nancy and Cindy to chime in as well. Nancy Riggle is on the call, and she is the executive director of Valley Residential Services. So she serves, I don't know how many clients that may not live with their parents anymore, may not have parents anymore, adults in our community by providing housing and caregiving services. And we really appreciate, it's a nonprofit, all the hard work that she does. She works tirelessly for our community, and we appreciate that. But I'm going to go ahead and now share my screen. And you all should have received this information via email, either through Shamra or myself, on some of the proposed Dda cuts. This is so hard to see. I don't know how to make it bigger. But in the packets that you have received, we sent out a lot of information for you, but something to think about is the cuts to DDA are not saving. So the cuts that they're proposing, everyone, you know, all government agencies are proposing a 15% cut out of their budgets because of what the COVID-19 has done to our economy. And do you want to share something, Cindy? Sorry.
I do. I'm sorry. I just want to say, if you go to slideshow, I think if you share these as slides, I think you'll be able to show it as a little bit larger. So you can say from current slide, I think.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Yeah.
It might make it larger. There you
Yes.
go.
I can read it anyway. I don't know. You all have this information. You have been sent this. If for some reason you did not get it, please reach out to me and I will make sure you have this. So with DDA, their funding is both state and both federal. So with the proposed cuts, they cut 15% state budget and 15% federal. So it's actually a 30% cut across the board. And what that would look like, we've heard lots of things. This is all, you know, until we see the budget, we'll know who exactly this cut will affect. But through this, it's for Washington State, we're the 41st in the country, and we're falling with our supports for people with disabilities. In fragile and inadequate serving, we're serving less than 30% of people. The DDA budget is built on current expenses, and as I shared, the 15% cuts are really 30% because of the matching federal dollars that DDA receives. The people that will be hit the most will be cognitive and behavioral disability. They face the highest rates of poverty. Right now, a lot of our children and adults with disabilities receive SSI. And that's about $741 a month, I believe. And some of them work and you can work up to a certain amount without losing your Social Security. We encourage, of course, people to be out in the community working and doing those things. But with, you know, this COVID, a lot of our adults who were out working are staying home and being safe right now. But those are the ones that'll be cut, and the dollar impact for the fiscal year 2021 through 2023 is they can close, they're thinking about closing an RHC, which is a rehabilitation home. But for supported living, so those that are in like the VRS homes or ARS or getting support otherwise, the dollar amount cut is going to be 243 million plus. For personal care, so personal care is through DDA, we get waivers, families get waivers. So you can have maybe a caregiver come into your home to help with your child's needs. Respite care, if you just need a night out, those kind of things they help with. Right now, a lot of them are probably helping with education for our children. They help with the daily living. And I suppose if they're out on their own, you know, they are also, you know, that pays for their caregiving hours that they get. I would say, well, I can't say, but a lot of our children and adults cannot be left alone. I don't know what the percentage of that is, but some of them need 24-hour care. And if you have a family with two parents working, one parent working, the needs are, you know, definitely, it's just tiring to, you know, have to provide 24-hour care. Especially when they're an adult and you're used to just sending them kind of, you know, like, okay, you're 18 or 20 or whenever they usually leave the home. You know, it's very tiring. And so these personal care and respite hours are very important to our families. and they rely on those heavily. Some of the other, like community, residential, and professional services, they're also looking at cutting employment and day services, which is very important for our adults. That I like to say that when we have children, we hope that they grow up and get a job and move out and, you know, kind of have their own life or go to college. Just because our children or young adults have disabilities doesn't mean that they don't want the very same thing for themselves. And so employment and day services provides job coaching, job retention. So if they get in a job, they have somebody there to help them along. It also provides for the adults that are, you know, of an older generation and have retired, a way to get out in the community and join groups and be more of a part of a community. That's looked to be cut by, let me see, it starts here, you know, by quite a bit. And so, I mean, all these, basically, the client eligibility cuts, we're looking at $490 million throughout Washington State. And that is about 81,000 clients. And we also sent information about, okay, so they did talk about, I didn't make a PowerPoint for this.
Hey, Angie,
yeah.
I just want to correct that. I think it's 8,100 clients, not 81,000. I just want to clarify.
Yes, sorry, 8,100, yes. So, I mean, it's a huge cut and it's scary for families. We're having to look at, you know, what are we going to do? Well, you have to plan ahead for these things. And we're hoping that this doesn't happen, but in reality, this very well could happen. And do you want to share about where the residents reside, just so we could get a picture of, I also have that on the slideshow. Cindy, do you want to share that? Or do you want me to?
Sure,
Okay.
I can, yeah, I want to, this is a graph that I refer to and think often of. My issue often with DDA is they often will talk about families or kids and adults living in their parents' home. And I just want to emphasize that when you say parents, you often think of two people that maybe can split shifts, right? Maybe the father can take on the day shift and the mom can take on the evening shift if their child needs the 24-hour care. But I just want to remind everyone that a lot of our parents, when we say parents, are actually single mothers where there isn't that relief in sight. There isn't someone that you can share that load with. I think that the term the mother load is there for a reason. It's the heaviness and the burden I think that we are facing as parents that often get unfunded through our state. If a person, for example, if an adult lives in an RHC, they're given 24-hour care, they have shifts, you would never ask for an employee to work 24 hours a day for 365 days with no break. And I feel like that's what they're asking of parents right now, is to take on caring for, without any respite, without a break, a significant amount of hours. And I worry about parents' mental health. But in terms of this particular graph, we have, and I don't know if you can't really see the image, maybe my face is covering the number you see in parents' home. That's 33,636 individuals. So let's break some of this information down. So of the 35,439, or 72% of clients receiving care and support from parents or relatives, 10,000 of them, 10,930, do not receive a paid service through DDA. So we are already determining that 10,930 people in Washington State need DDA, are eligible for DDA supports, but are not receiving any paid service. And what this proposed budget is saying is that we're going to add another 8,000 to this 10,000 number of individuals that are deemed necessary for support, and say, sorry, no paid service for you all. And that just, for me, is is horrendous. So I guess the call to action today for legislators is just to know and understand the impact this would have on the families that are raising and supporting these children in their homes, saving the state significant money by not having them in an institution. I just am asking that a closer look at how these funds are appropriated could be looked at before it's cut. And we're reeling from that going, it was already dire and now it's devastating. So hopefully that sends a strong message. And I don't know if Nancy wants to share too, Angie.
Oh, I was gonna just point out that in the residential rehabilitation centers, it's 557 individuals, which doesn't seem like that much. Well, if you divide it by, let's say 200,000 a year that it takes to house them there, you know, you're looking into the millions and millions of dollars for that. And to keep them in your parents' home, yes, it's a lot less.
I would like to, I'm going to add one more thing, just that, so it is the state's move to move our individuals from our RHCs into SOLAs. Unfortunately, I mean, when we're talking about inclusion in our community, those SOLAs often reside in Yakima, Spokane, Seattle. If you want to actually have your child, your adult in a residential facility, and you want it to be a SOLA, and this is where they're pushing a lot of our RHC adults into, they have to actually leave our community. So again, looking at state funding, I just look at the little bit that we're giving Nancy to do the tremendous work she's doing in our community to house our adults with disabilities. I just think there needs to be a closer look at our rural communities and how housing is provided, and that more of those fundings that they give to SOLAs can be given also to to our smaller nonprofits that are doing similar work.
And I am going to turn it over to Nancy to share about what these effects, these cuts how it could affect her business, her nonprofit, and more importantly, the clients. I wanted just to share a quick story. I was with an adult with a disability that lived in a VRS home, and we were out in the community. And as we pulled up to her house, she said, "This is my family and this is my home now." And it just hit me because I knew that these cuts could be on the horizon, and it just hit me hard. And I think that's just enough said from a client's perspective of what this would do to them. So, okay, Nancy, if you want to go ahead and share.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today. And I have to say, on December 1st, I'm going to celebrate my 42nd anniversary with Valley Residential Services. So I've been around for a long, long time. And we always, in supported living, have seen the funding go up and down. So just let me tell you, in 2008, when the economy took a downturn, we got funding cuts in supported living. We already weren't flush with funding to begin with. We had a funding cut. Our staff, everybody at VRS, had 6 years of wage freezes. So that was just incredible. Well, in the last few years, it's been great that people are starting to look at supported living and needing more funding because it's inequitable in the state. RHCs, which are the large state institutions, and SOLAs receive way more funding than supported living. SOLAs get 40% more funding than supported living, and probably because they are state operated, and so they have a strong labor union, and state employees push for additional funding. We have the counterpart to any of the VRS clients in either a SOLA program or in an RHC in Washington State. So always, always, always I push for supported living to get more equitable funding. It's just not fair that that the funding is so inequitable. So we started feeling a little bit positive. We had not had an increase in our administrative rate since 2004. So last year we finally had a bump in our admin rate, which was pretty amazing. At VRS, 92% of our income goes to direct support, wages, and benefits. So that doesn't leave a lot for administrative funding. So we try to find creative ways to bring in funding, grants, and support and donations. What they're talking about now is cutting people depending on the level of functioning they have. And I think that's kind of a misnomer, because people who are supposedly highly skilled people in our world, often just a little bits of support they get keeps them out of high support kinds of things like the hospital or jail or institutional settings. So the folks that we see that are highly capable in the state's eyes really are doing as well as they are doing because they get a small amount of supported living support. Without that, they're going to be struggling. And I think that we need to not be looking at people just needing support because they have heavy duty behavioral needs or heavy duty medical needs. So at the beginning of my time 42 years ago, it was really pretty easy to get people into services with DDA and get them into supported living services. Families would come to see me and say, hey, I know it's time. My son or daughter can't live with me and I'm having medical problems or whatever. And we just push the system upward and that person would come into services. Now I swear it is horrific. You have to show that your family member is going to die if you don't get services, or you have to show that the family member is willing to institutionalize their son or daughter. Who should have to make that kind of decision? It's not fair and it's not right as far as I'm concerned. So I'm pretty well known for being a fighter for things that people need. And I don't believe that it should be based on the severity of their disability. I believe that it should be based on the needs that those people have. Just because somebody doesn't need 24-hour staff support doesn't mean that they don't have needs that can be met with just a little bit of support. And our supports, I think you would find, are pretty cheap and pretty effective. One thing that's bogging us down now is that she mentioned the people going into SOLAs, which are state operated living alternatives. And that's because supported living is still woefully underfunded. So we are encouraged to take people with serious, challenging behavioral issues or medical issues, and we don't have adequate funding to do that. Plus, we have many regulatory agencies spending a lot of time with us. We have Department of Health, we have RCS, which is Residential Care Services. I believe that there should be accountability. I believe we should be looked into if things aren't going well. I have an open door policy. We have people in and out of here every day that want to make sure that people's needs are being met.
Nancy,
And
we have a question for
yes.
you. Okay, go ahead, Skylar.
Sorry to interrupt, Nancy. I was just wondering if, so we had talked before a little bit about the initiative implemented minimum wage increases, and we just saw the last of those large increases. I think it was $1.50 for 2020. Just curious what the impact of that has been, and also, I know that high turnover rates have been an issue, which I'm guessing is somewhat related to compensation and the limitations that you have due to the funding issues that you're talking about.
Yes.
So curious about the minimum wage and turnover rates right now.
Okay, so turnover rates, I haven't done stats for 2020 yet. I won't until the end of the year, but we've been running about 35 to 40% as far as turnover, vast majority in the first 2 years of employment. We're the 20th largest employer in Walla Walla County.
Wow.
And fancy that, our funding, our budget for being the 20th largest employer in Walla Walla County is really small compared to other agencies and businesses that are about our size. Minimum wage increases have been dramatic because of the admin rate increase last year and our rate increases from DDA. It's been better than we could have expected as far as the minimum wage, but it was really hard for our staff that may have worked here for 20 years. And we have people that have worked here for as long as I've worked here almost. So it was really hard for those people that were working, had been here 20 years, to see people coming in at almost the rate they get. That's been the big issue. And this January, we're looking at, we don't know about increases, we're looking at cuts. So we're still having a minimum wage increase. It's not going to be as dramatic, but there will be one. So yeah, I really appreciate, Skylar, everything you've done for us, all the support you've given us. I know it's a hard thing to look at the expenses of our programs, but the vast majority of our clients in their homes get 24-hour-a-day staffing. And cuts, what's happened with COVID, I mean, you just can think about it. I was in an over an hour conference call with the community about COVID. Supported living clients are way more supported that way than people in hospital settings, in nursing homes. But it's a constant for us right now. We have probably 10 people out at any given time because they have cold symptoms. We can't risk the health of our clients. We've had, in the last month, we had one person with active COVID, one client. Now we have the second, but because they're so protected by living in small units, it's been a good thing. But COVID is expensive. DDA actually has given us some increases because of COVID expenses, and I think the feds have poured money in there, but it's just not keeping up. And I have to say this for benefit of families, because families are near and dear to my heart. Any of you that know me know that I work with families, and families suffer. And part of what helps us suffer as families and as supported living providers is there are humongous regulations that weren't there 42 years ago for sure. We're probably not even there 20 years ago. The training requirements, we have a full-time trainer. I mean, we had to. The training requirements are exorbitant, and we don't always feel that they meet what we need for people to learn. The continuing education requirements, just the things that cost by running a business impact us. So you look at the family medical leave, medical insurance, L&I, all those things impact us. So I've been on a bandwagon for a while now. I've been on a soapbox.
I love your soapbox. I think it needs to be heard. So thank you for sharing, Nancy. I just want to bring attention to Sharon just posted in the, Sharon Adolfson just posted in the chat box that the RHC costs approximately $300,000 per client for 1 year. Supported living is so much cheaper and can serve several individuals on this amount. And there's, about 600 people in institutions. I just think what is missed when we start, in our language, we talk supported living, we talk SOLAs. I think what we're talking to is urban versus rural, and our rural communities need the supported living to be supported. I mean, we need it paid. So I think there needs to be some look at this divide between the urban and rural areas, and how we can really keep our adults and our individuals in our communities where they belong. So that's my soapbox.
The thing too that I always harp on, because you don't know this unless you work on housing issues, since we have to help people get housing, we are the last, at least the last time I looked at statistics, we are dead last as far as affordable housing for very low income people. That's why I pound on that bandwagon, and I sit on committees and I try to push things forward, because if you've got the need to take somebody in, the housing has to be there, and we have to look at creative ways to provide that. And I don't feel that it's fair anymore to expect supported living to take on new people and referrals when we can't even take care of our own, pretty much, and we can't manage turnover, and we can't deal with business expenses. So SOLAs look like they are living this beautiful life and taking new clients and, you know, helping them improve their lives. We do the same thing at 40% less. And we can't take on new people and manage what we've got, especially with COVID. So I'll be quiet now unless somebody has a question for me.
And you are doing it in their community where they live.
In their community. And I push for local people. If
Yeah.
I've got a referral from a local person, I don't care. I don't care what their needs are. I'm going to push that they get supports. When I get a referral from Seattle, which happens every single week, probably 15 to 20 referrals a week because they can't find services, I'm not going to push. And I'm not going to look at that referral packet. But if it's a local person and they come in and they say, we're dying here, we need help, you bet, I'm going to push. This is their community. This is where they belong. These are where their supports are.
I did really quick want to share for the families that are on the call, if you have your, which was shared in the email that Shamra sent out, to find out what classification you are with your DDA, you go to the summary page and you're either an A, it goes from A high to E medium. And E is, you know, the highest care needed. But like across the board, the cuts are like A high, it could be 100 is what they're saying. To E medium is 28. But like a B medium or a C medium, it's like B medium is 1,384 proposed cuts. And when we say cuts, it's not like they're going to get less services. No, what they're talking about is cutting them completely. There will be no services. And then when it comes time, when the money is there again, they have to sign up, get on the same waiting list that they were on for many years. They don't just get, you know, to get back on. They have to know when these openings are, and they have to get on and wait. I mean, sometimes the waiting, we have how many people on the waiting list to get on? There are 10,930 people that are just on the waiting list, waiting to get DDA services. Sharon shared, supporting individuals where they live instead of other areas. Supporting living does a much better job, and individuals can be in their home, eat when they want, go to bed when they want, and shop when they want to. According to a call with DDA that I was on, the cuts will be random across the board. Yes. So we've heard both. Like we've heard that they're just going to cut the, you know, maybe somebody needs medication management once a week. Well, what if they didn't have that once a week medication management? I mean, could they end up not taking their medicines? And if they have mental illness, they could maybe end up on the street harming themselves or others. I mean, it's a serious thing, but we don't know if really, I feel like it's the roll of the dice, and it's with people's life. I'm gonna have to move my.
No, and I was just thinking too, it's like if we weren't talking about these cuts, we would be asking you for more funds. So that we're even talking about them cutting more folks when it's already, I feel, underfunded. It just feels again like we would still be having this discussion that it needs to be funded. So I guess my beg of our legislators is just please be another advocate on behalf of the adults and the children in our community that need these supports. And I would say it's not easy to get DDA services. It is quite the gauntlet. I mean, you fill out an application, you have to be assessed. It's like, it's yearly, it's annual visits by someone that come to your home to assess your, you know, your home environment. This is not an easy, to become eligible is not easy. To then receive funds, we waited 10 years for a paid service for Molly. And now she's one of the categories at risk of losing that support. So I think I do want to have some other families. I know we're going to have a couple share about what that impact would be for their families if they lose that funding and supports. And Angie, I don't know if she's still on or if she moved and got disconnected here. Anybody see Angie on this call? I think she just left us. So I'm looking right now. I don't think I'm able to add folks. I know we had a couple that were going to come on to share. I don't see them on here. Skylar, I mean, as an off topic a bit, we had talked earlier in this fall about guardianship transfers. I know that we have families moving here from Alaska and from other states, and they were questioning that transfer and just that you have to reestablish guardianship and the costs involved. And we know that you can do it very inexpensively, but you are at risk because it's a legal document of things not being completely in line. Do you know if, Skylar, I know your staff was going to look maybe into that.
I don't have anything for you right now, but I'm happy to work with you and see if we can get a bill introduced to address that. And I think when we're talking about the significant budget problems that we're facing, options like that mean more dollars in the pocket of the family, but are also not a cost to the state, I think are kind of the creative tools that we need to be looking for. So yeah, I've been in and out of town quite a bit, so that's my bad, but I'm definitely willing to pursue that this session. I think it's a great idea that it should be a fairly easy fix.
Yeah, I don't know what you were doing in November, Skylar. Like, gee, you know, what have you been up to? So no, thank you. And I just don't know if everyone knows, but yeah, it is cumbersome for families. It treats individuals with disability like property when you feel like you can't move state to state like anybody else in America, and still have to spend significant money to reestablish guardianship. Just feels like a hindrance that families don't need. So thank you for listening when I posed the question.
No, I think it's a great idea. And, you know, even like Nancy, when you're talking about services you're providing, also with the kind of that same philosophy on budget savings, if there are things that we can do to reduce the cost to you that don't cost the state, I think we need to be looking at those options too. So if there are regulations that can be suspended for a short time during this recession, ideas like that. So yeah, Cindy, if we could get together over the next week or so and maybe get some policy staff on the line as well and come up with a bill draft, that would probably be a good option.
Fantastic. And I think I speak on behalf of families on this, and you all correct me if I'm wrong, but any effort made to simplify any of the systems that individuals and families work with would be the biggest blessing. I think it could result in amazing cost savings. It certainly would save the mental crisis that our families are in. So much of the paperwork is redundant. So much of the paperwork feels very specified because we have children with disabilities. It's like, oh no, well, you need to fill out this an additional 15 pages of information. I think whatever we can do to simplify processes and systems would be beautiful. And Angie, I'm glad to see your face back on. You scared me. So.
I don't know what happened. My computer just died, so I was, oh no. I'm glad this show still went on. Thank you. Carla does have a question about childcare, and I think we can address that in our question and answer time. I do want to just share a snippet. It is a huge burden for our families right now trying to find childcare as their children are not in school. And I get calls every single day, and it's really devastating our families. They're having to quit work, do all sorts of things, and it's devastating. But we will bring that up in question and answer time, Carla. I'm waiting for, oh, I think this is Jeannie right now, and she is our family story. And we received a couple of family stories, and she's going to share both of them. And they're both from Columbia County. So welcome, Jeannie.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yes. So you're just on time to read your family story. So are you
Happy
ready?
to do it.
Okay.
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay.
I also will be reading for Rebecca, as she cannot be here today. Hello, my name is Jeannie Walter. I just wanted to introduce myself. I have 4 boys, and my third boy is 10, and he has Down syndrome. His name is Valken. And we have been discussing the budget cuts amongst ourselves here in Columbia County with great distress. I just wanted to let you know there is a donut hole situation for people who work and who are struggling with a family. You don't get a lot of benefits. You get some benefits for families that have children or family members with special needs. For us, the funding we receive is minimal because we work and do not qualify for a lot of the further assistance. The assistance is imperative to keeping the kids with the families. You have to understand that. It's not a huge amount of money, but it keeps us going. It allows us to keep working. It allows us to keep our families together. And I just wanted to mention that we have been fighting for this waiver for a very long time in Washington State. When my child was born, there was 14,500 kids who qualified for this waiver in Washington and did not receive it. It took us 5 years to get off the waiting list and actually receive any kind of assistance from the state. And I wanted to mention that it saves tons of money for the state because we are able to take care of our family members at home instead of having them in an institution, which is estimated to cost more than $209,000 a year. The last amount I could find was about that from 2009. I'm sure it's gone up from then. And this is compared to $42,486 for Medicaid-funded home and community-based services. And I guarantee a lot of the families don't get near that amount. And that is not just state funding, but that is the federal Medicaid and federal match. I do not think people understand how expensive having a child with special needs may be. The proposed state cuts will kick more than 8,104 people off the waiver, which provides desperately needed funds which have been fought for decades, like I said. We have been working in Washington to qualify and to get the rest of these people off the waiver. And now to have it be proposed for 8,104 people to be put back on the waiting list is just so offensive. I cannot even talk about it. A lot of people here are really struggling. I want you to know that our county school is in. In the spring, we didn't have school. A lot of people had to take time off their jobs. They had to quit their jobs to stay home with their family members because our family members need care. Most of them need full-time, 24-hour care. And it's not an option to take that much leave a lot of times when school closes. It's not an option to have daycare for a lot of these children. And while in Columbia County, it's not existent. We don't even have a daycare that has the ability to take people with special needs right now.
Walla Walla does not either at this time.
Yeah, and so it's very important to understand. And right now, our schools, the high school and middle school end at 12:30, and the elementary school ends at 2. And so trying to find a job to work around that is exceptionally difficult. Right now, I'm working at the school. That's why I'm a little late. I apologize. But our school day ends at 2. So what people have had to do is either quit their jobs, find other jobs, usually with less pay, or we can, with the waiver, have respite care where if the children are over 18 and the healthcare provider is over 18, a family member, they can get this respite care funding. And this is what's keeping some people going. You have to understand, this is keeping some people in their homes. It's allowing them to feed their families, and it's allowing them to prevent having to put their children into institutions. I'm going to read a letter from one of our Columbia County residents. And she wrote this on Facebook regarding her family and to let the public know what's going on. A lot of times people just assume that we stay home all the time, we don't work, we just get, bankrolled by the government. That's just not the case. This is from Rebecca Gibson. I work full-time and have a child with a developmental disability. She qualifies for Social Security but doesn't get any money because I work. After being on a wait list for more than 10 years, she qualified for a waiver program. Basically, she is on her own, doesn't look at my income. So this is just strictly on her income, the child. What does this mean? No, we don't get a paycheck. They pick up the copays, they pick up specialty formula food source, almost bankrupted her, that my insurance wouldn't cover. They refund me the cost of keeping her on my insurance. They cover therapies beyond my insurance limit, and this is the bonus, no monthly check. They will cover respite care if we had someone to do this. And like I said, there's nobody really right now in Columbia County, very few people and no kind of daycare. Why? Families were turning their children over to the state because they could not take care of their developmentally disabled kids. It costs more than $250,000 per year to put a child with developmental disabilities in an institution. I assume that she's pretty close in that regard, since this is the 2009 data that I had. Did you know at one time they didn't really allow a family to keep these children at home? And that was definitely the case with people with Down syndrome. Why am I bringing all of this up? Thanks to overspending and the loss of revenue, the state is looking at cutting $8,000 from receiving similar benefits. This would include people living in group homes. And she asked, do you really think this is going to save the state money? As far as my home, we'll get by. I'll do everything I can to make my daughter the best person she can be. She is what is important. There were a few years that were more than a struggle. My brothers helped pay some of the bills. The community kicked in a couple of times for things like a hearing aid. I was working, but all the hospital visits, medications, specialists were very expensive. For me personally, I need to be there for my daughter. I don't need yet another level of stress. And then she goes on to ask people to please contact the representatives there in the room and let them know how you feel about this. I guess they track all of this by email now, not by phone calls. I won't ever give up my daughter, but others may. That would only cost taxpayers more. Even if my daughter is not able to work, we regularly work on ways she can give back to the community. She is not being raised to believe she owed anything or that everything is free. She understands work, and she asks, please help parents keep their children. Now, this is Jeannie again. I'm just saying that the new research shows that children with Down syndrome are 4 times more likely to be hospitalized from COVID-19 and 10 times more likely to die from it. This creates an extra layer of stress. We can't really have our children in group homes right now. We have another individual here that has taken her child, adult child, out of group homes because it's not safe due to COVID. And so I just want you to realize these people are stressed financially from the situation. They're stressed, worried about their loved ones. And again, financially, it's going to cost you more. You're going to lose the federal match, and these people are going to require state funding for the homelessness population that this is going to create and other issues. So please, please, please consider and do not cut this very important program. It is a lifeline to the people of Columbia County, and I'm sure to Walla Walla County. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeannie, for sharing. I would also like to say that Rebecca Gibson is an essential worker, so she's had to go to work. She works at the penitentiary, like many of our families here in Walla Walla. They're having to make a choice of not just because of COVID or because of these proposed cuts, but because of the child care in our region. There is none. We've called child care aware. None of them are taking children with disability. And I guess we can get into that with questions and answers. But, you know, a lot of our families, they have to work. Even if their child does get, you know, money from Social Security, or they get these funds to help care for their child, it's not going into their own pocket. There's still bills to pay. Sometimes there's more bills. Our families have to travel basically to Yakima, Seattle, or Spokane to get specialized care. And we gladly do this because it's the best for our children. But it costs money. It costs time off of work. We do have people for people that are on Medicaid. That system, I'm sorry to say, is atrocious. It's Medicaid ran. They treat parents poorly because they're we're asking for a favor when it really comes out of our child's Medicaid funds. It is there for this reason. We can't take family members with us. Some families need extra help. You know, just your child and yourself. You have a child with autism. Traveling is, you know, they could be screaming the whole way. They also ask us to travel to, like, for instance, to Seattle. We leave at 2, 3, 4 in the morning to get the gas because they will not pay for, say, hotel because if our appointment is not before 9 a.m. in the morning. So their families are either having to take a risk at, you know, driving in the middle of the night, doing a whole day trip there and back, or, you know, having to pay out of pocket, taking an extra day off of work. So I think we have some messages that I'm going to read real quick, and then we'll move on to question and answer time. I want to be cognizant of everyone's time today. So Nancy Riggles shared that one of the things that could be streamlined is the timeline to get a contract to provide respite care or Medicaid personal care services. The training is time consuming and isn't provided in our community. It can take months to get a provider to help a family at home. I think they have to take like at least, is it 150 hours of training or 70 now? I know they cut it back. If you're a family member and do the training, it's less, but it's all, it's not done here in our community. Of course, it's all online. But it's you know, difficult to find somebody willing to do that. And if you have family, some of us are very blessed to have family in our community, some are not. And so they're relying on strangers basically to take care of their kids. We want them to have this training for sure. But I feel like, yeah, that could be streamlined much easier. And again, we're using agencies that don't pay very well to care for these children. I don't know, maybe they make a little bit more than minimum wage, I'm not sure, but they're in their home or out in the community with your child every day. So there is a huge turnover there as well. And families are just scrambling. But I'm gonna open it up for question and answer time. So feel free to chime in.
I think to Angie's side, this is Cindy. I just wanted, Skylar, and I know you might have some questions for the families as well on what you want to ask. And I hope you're okay to stick with us for just a little bit longer. As you know, we always run long. I mean, our legislative team, we have to push the legislators out of our rooms because they just want to stay around and talk with us. But I just want to say that oftentimes our families are given some DDA, either dollars or hours that they can provide, but they kind of leave it up to the families to seek out those contracts, to find someone that will get the training to then provide the service back to their child. But you're never the one that pays the person. It's incredibly complicated. So if families are not using these dollars or hours, it's because the system is broken. It's not at all attributed to the needs of the families. So I'm gonna.
I would like to just state one more thing real quick. There is something called Carina Care. It's a website where you can, you know, put your needs in of what you need for your child care, and they will, people will answer you. So that's a new way that we can maybe find some good qualified DD caregivers in our community. Okay, take it away.
Can I ask a question or no, make a statement?
Yes, Terry.
Say something. So I'm not really Carla, Skylar, that's my nom de plume. My name's Terry. I have a 33-year-old son with Down syndrome, and I worked in the government, county, 30 years. And so I understand budgets and cuts. what I find disconcerting, and I would like you all to stand up and scream about when you're in any meeting, is the fact that those that may end up coming off of a list will not get first choice back in. That, and there's a couple of my parents on here that I've worked with for many years. That happened back in the early 90s. And the only way we got back on the sneaky back on the list is, you know, one parent found out that something was opening back up again, and we just did a phone tree calling. It is imperative, those of us, my son's 33, they wanted to institutionalize him. That was what they did back in '87. He did not do that. He fought a long time to get services, and those of us that have fought to get the services, if we get removed because of the budget, should be given first opportunity to get back on the services. That's one of my things.
That totally makes sense, and I think that's a great idea.
I think that, sorry, but I think that, you know, when you start looking at budgets too, they're talking about graduates, and they're going to put half of the graduating class of kids that have disabilities on a waiver. And it's like, okay, so you're going to take 8,100 out of DDA off, and you're going to take 12,000 out of aging off, but it's okay to give I don't know, 700 to these graduating kids. Our system is so broken that, in my opinion, it just needs to be blown up and start again, but that's not going to happen. But we need some really just strong voices, and we need to just start, in my opinion, sending emails to all the legislators, whether they're R's or D's, and whether we're in their district or not. I mean, I have to say that the 8th, 9th, and 16th districts have been phenomenal in the years that I've done this. Thank you, sir. They back us 100%, but they're in the minority in both houses. But you can send emails to anybody, and most of the time their LAs probably look at them, but if they start getting inundated, they're going to have to start paying attention. And I don't know how session will roll this year. It's going to be crazy.
I would just add, Sharon, that the Appropriations Committee is where a lot of these, where we might have the best opportunity to intervene if there are proposed cuts in the budget. I'm assistant ranking on the Appropriations Committee, so I'm a little bit closer to the budget than most legislators. But that's a good place for us to very vocally bring awareness to some of these issues through the amendment process in committee. So I think it's a good opportunity for us to work together to identify the most troubling cuts and make those proposals in appropriations.
So are we going to have a chance then to talk through, I mean, during committee, to be able to have a communication with committee?
So it sounds like the House is going to be completely virtual this year, which is not something that I support because it creates challenges. But I think we can have, as that process progresses, stay in communication and have phone calls like this closer to that time. Once a proposed budget comes out, but before it is passed through appropriations, it is a good window of opportunity for us to work together.
Thank
We
you.
have a question from Mary Campbell. She asked, is there other states that we could look at with their successful funding models?
Yes.
I think it's a great idea, Mary. Yeah.
The Midwest does it much better.
Midwest.
The Midwest, but they don't have unions like we have here. That's our barrier. That's why the funding's going to SOLAs and it won't go to supported living, because the unions, they talk constantly to the legislators, and we have a governor that supports all that. So
Are there any states with unions that have successful funding models? I mean, if we're 41st, we have a long ways to go. When I say, let's look high and let's look at successful models with unions so we can come to our state and say, here's a model. I mean, there've got to be some states that are better with unions. If we're 41st, I guess I'll just throw that out there.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that, Mary. Because the reality in this state is that unions are going to continue to exist. And unions serve an important purpose too. So not to completely bash on unions, but I think that's perfect to look at other union states that are doing better than we are and learn from them. So, you know, I don't serve on the Human Services Committee, so I see the fiscal side of a lot of these issues and have some experience with Maureen's office because she was on Human Services for her entire career. But I think it's really important for all of you to bring ideas to educate me, since I'm not as close to the policy side on this. But if there are ideas that come from other states, I think that's an excellent idea.
The hardship we find is that so many states operate so differently. That's where I think as a family, if you ever wanted to move to a separate state, it's a crapshoot whether or not you know if it's going to be a better situation for your child or not. It's very hard. It's very community centric. So because so many of our supports are derived from nonprofits and other forms of community supports and not necessarily government, that it's very hard to determine a move state to state what is better and what's not, and what community in a state is better and what's not. So it'll be a little bit more difficult, I think, finding what is actually working in these states. We can see some of the fiscal changes in the budget and how they're supporting them that way, but there's a lot to learn that's very hard to find concrete data on.
I just want to add one thing too, just as a general philosophy going into session, kind of just evaluating what is the role of government, basically, like broad question, but serving vulnerable populations, whether they're people with developmental disabilities or physical disabilities or elderly folks that are, you know, toward the end years of their life. You know, those just need to take priority. Public safety, K-12 obviously is a big part, but my mindset going into session is that the services that you're providing, whether it's Nancy or a parent who is providing those services in home, that's a really core function of state government and needs to be preserved. So you are at the top few issues in my priority list going into session. And so I think there are a lot of places that that would still be painful to cut, like higher ed. Higher ed is extremely important, and preparing people, you know, to be successful in a career is extremely important. But you know, I think there are other places that can cut that would hurt people less than the services that we're talking about today. That's all.
Do you have any other questions? Thank you so much, Skylar. Carla, do you want to bring up the child care situation real quick? Or do you want me to? Well, she's not answering. So I guess this is, I don't know if legislative has anything to do with this, but I get calls daily. Our families, I get emotional, but they are in distress. There's no school. And when there is school, they get 2.5 hours a day of really I feel like our school district is doing the bare minimum to try to keep our parents happy. And we're supposed to be okay with that. And it's not okay anymore for our children to be treated less than. We had a webinar with our superintendent, Wade Smith, in August. And he said that there would be para educators at different daycare facilities. We have a very strong parent who called around and asked questions about this. One of them was Blue Mountain Community Church, and they were, it was free, and they were willing to take middle school children with special needs on, to help with, well, we didn't know if it was to help with homework or whatever. So when it came closer time for school to start, she got a hard no, because they had para educators there to support the kids after school, after their 2.5 hours, but it was only for homework help. Like, our kids don't need homework help. They shunned us, kind of, I would say, because they feel like we're asking for one-on-one para support. We are not asking for that. We are asking for the same thing that other students in our district get. The YMCA said, well, we can't help you because we can't offer one-on-one support. We're not asking that. So our parents are struggling, having their kids there 2.5 hours a day. Well, now they're not there at all. They're getting packets sent home. Some of them are in contact with the teachers in Paris, some are not. I learned today that, I've learned that, our paras are working full time, but I'm not quite sure what they're doing. And I'm not trying to negate the school at all. I mean, this is a difficult time for everybody. But we really need childcare, not just for our children, say birth to 3 or birth to 10. We need childcare up to 18, basically, and beyond. And if I could do it myself, I would, but I cannot do this. And I don't know what to tell the parents. I mean, our parents are one mother, single mom, works. She is waiting for the bus to come, but she lives on a busy street and in an apartment. And her child is not going to wait between 5 minutes to a half hour for the bus to come. So she has to leave her inside by herself and runs to get her. And then another parent who is an essential worker has had to basically stop working and to support her child in this need, and trying to find, I just don't know what to say. I know our school district is doing the best that, I'm not going to say they're doing the best, because I don't believe that, honestly. I know this is a hard time for everyone, but our children deserve the same opportunities as any other child. And I am working with the ombudsman on this. So, I mean, I think we got a handle on this, but this is another thing that is just one more thing, one more layer to stress that, I mean, all of our families are facing, whether they have a child with disability or not, but it's just such a huge layer. And, it's just very disappointing that we're not trying to look for solutions. I don't feel like maybe the leaders at our school are looking for solutions for us. I feel like the 2.5 hours is like a Band-Aid to make us happy. And I don't know if you want to share a little bit.
Well, I'm just too wondering how the businesses can be more proactive. I think we're leaning pretty heavily on the schools to answer a lot of our childcare needs, when maybe some more sympathetic employers on, wow, parents, you're a single mom and you have 3 children all on online classes that needs support. How are you doing this? Maybe we can offer a leave of absence or some other form of keeping them employed, but giving them some grace during this time. So yeah, it is atrocious, the stress levels of our families at this time, trying to navigate medical, schools, being an advocate. So it's just a lot.
I would agree. This is Jeannie again, and I agree with what you guys are saying. It's, you know, we did not have school in the spring, and besides all the teaching, like I said, I have 4 kids that would be homeschooled now if they call it again, right, for home. Besides everybody being, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, so besides all of them being on for their classes and special activities, people have to realize, you know, people with special needs require speech therapy and physical therapy and occupational therapy and behavioral therapy and cognitive therapy and all the doctor's visits that we're now doing in virtual. It is overwhelming. So my question is, can we rewrite the budget? Do we have to cut 15%? Can we do that? Where is the stimulus money that's supposed to be coming down to our people? Can we push for that to help augment some of these cuts? Tyler, how do we do that?
So I would just say that the 15% cut was really only a budgeting exercise. It wasn't necessarily a 15% proposed cut. It was just kind of like a pre-budget discussion. The governor was asking all agencies for where would they cut if they had to cut 15%. But that was before the latest revenue forecast came out that showed a budget deficit of only about half of what it was in the previous forecast. So I don't think we're looking at a 15% cut at this point. That was just a kind of hypothetical budget exercise.
We don't like this hypothetical exercise. This is not helping stress loads for families.
Oh, I know. And you know, I think that the right way to budget is not across the board cuts. That's just not a good way to budget. I think a thoughtful approach by agency or by department, and then agency within the department to figure out where cutting can be done that causes or results in the least harm is a better way to reduce the budget. So I think the 15 is a scary number, but I don't think it's that bad, honestly. But there will be cutting, and that's where we have to be careful and make sure that we're cutting in places that don't cause the kind of harm that we're talking about today.
I would highly suggest that People for People is cut, and you do an online system and you send people cards to get gas. You can do that. That would cut a lot of fat and needless waste of people's time. It is a cumbersome system. It is offensive to people who have to go through it, and it is inefficient.
So are there currently, is there any transportation assistance that exists right now? No.
That's correct. That's a transportation assistance.
We as a network have been able to use some memorial contributions that are given to the nonprofit that we're able, because it's not within our budget, it's something that's not foreseen. We're able to give small cards to help families with travel to Seattle or Spokane with doctor appointments. Typically it's the new families that just got a diagnosis. They didn't have a chance as a family to budget for an expensive trip to a doctor. And it's a one time a year, but it's very minimal. But again, it's a Visa card and we don't expect a report back. We know parents under stress and they wouldn't be asking for it if they didn't have a medical visit elsewhere.
It seems like transportation mileage reimbursement would be a super easy thing administratively to do. So, you know, some of your receipt from whatever visit you went to or whatever, I don't know, IRS mileage rate.
It's just very hard for rural communities because I think in urban settings, you have multiple gas stations that have contracts with People for People. So you can go to many different gas stations to fill up. And in small communities, they haven't sought out those contracts with those gas stations. So you have one place and you can only fill it up a certain time. And maybe your appointment's at 2. You have to get to Seattle and back in one day because that's what you can afford. It's incredibly non-rural helpful.
That seems like a recurring theme everywhere in public policy.
So my granddaughter, my family lives in Sequim, My granddaughter has leukemia. Their fill up for the gas, just to give you, speaking of rural, is on Aurora Avenue. You all know where Aurora is in Seattle, right? Nowhere the hell near Squim.
I lived in Swim and I went to Seattle for 2 babies. Seriously. And thank God my sister lived in Bothell. I was born and raised in Bothell. So I could go stay with my sister, but still it took an hour and a half to get to downtown Seattle.
Yep.
And when you got a kid, it's a little on the resistant side. Yeah, it is not a fun trip at all. And don't forget that you got to deal with ferries and, well, or you drive around. Yeah, it's not pretty.
Well, and people for people is cumbersome. You have to call, you know, I understand this part. You can call up to a month ahead. You have to get a referral from your primary doctor to see a specialist every year. You have to call